Last Wednesday, Japan's Internal Affairs Ministry published new data showing that the number of Japanese nationals fell by over 900,000 people in 2024, the biggest annual drop on record, marking the 16th consecutive year that the Japanese population has fallen. This was due to a record low number of births, around 690,000, and a record high number of deaths, nearly 1.6 million. This year also heralds Japan's 2025 problem, marking the year when all of Japan's roughly 8 million baby boomers will be 75 or older, pushing up health and pension costs while the working age population only shrinks. This crisis has become so urgent that Japan's former Prime Minister Fumio Kishida told Parliament in 2023, Japan is standing on the verge of whether we can continue to function as a society. So in this video, we'll explain the data on Japan's declining population, how successive governments have tried to fix it, and how it interacts with the recent hard-right surge we saw at Japan's elections last month. Dive deeper into politics with our magazine Too Long. Yeah, we make a real physical magazine. In the latest issue, we discuss if Starmer just has no vision for Britain, if Farage could become Prime Minister, and ask if we're observing the end of the American order. Find out more by clicking the link in the description. First then, let's take a look at the recent data published by the Japanese government. Last week, official figures from the Internal Affairs and Communications Ministry confirmed that Japan's population had declined for a 16th consecutive year, falling by 0.44% to about 124.3 million people at the start of 2025. This was due to a 17th consecutive annual drop in births, with just 688,000 babies born in Japan in 2024, plus a record high number of deaths at 1.6 million. This high death rate is due to the size of Japan's elderly population, aged 65 plus, which has increased every year between 1994 and 2022, and now accounts for nearly 30% of the total population. Conversely, the working age population, aged 15 to 64, has decreased every year since 1995, making up 60% of the population in 2024. This demographic shift has contributed to the so-called 2025 problem. In 2018, Japan's government projected that, due to its rapidly growing elderly population, overall social security costs, including pension payments, would increase by nearly 60% between 2025 and 2040. While Japan's elderly population is among the healthiest in the world, with more than half of 65 to 69-year-olds and more than a third of 70 to 74-year-olds employed in 2023, they're also among those living the longest, requiring more years of state support. Finally, the data also shows that the foreign population in Japan has increased to nearly 3.68 million people, the highest since records began in 2012. This is because, until 2022, Japan's foreign population was less than 3 million people, but has since risen due to the government's expansion of overseas work visas, which we'll explain later. Anyway, to address this population decline, successive Japanese governments have tried and failed to reverse it through various childcare-based initiatives to encourage more people to have children. This began under Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who introduced policies to subsidize nurseries, loosen regulations on childcare providers, and keep women in the workforce. But Abe's reforms did little to change things. So in 2023, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's government increased annual childcare spending to around 3.5 trillion yen, or $25 billion, from 3 trillion. And in 2024, Japan's parliament passed a law to set up a new 600 billion yen, or $4 billion, childcare support funding scheme, which will run from 2026, with that scheme set to increase to 1 trillion yen, or $6.8 billion, by 2028. Overall, the scheme is designed to offer increased benefits to parents. Specifically, it extends coverage for children from 15 to 18, doubles the monthly allowance for a third or subsequent child, expands parental leave and daycare facilities, and scraps the household income cap for the allowance, so that children are eligible regardless of their parents' employment status. But while these reforms clearly increase the economic incentives, there are also social factors preventing Japanese women from having children, such as a demanding work culture, falling marriage rate, and paternalistic traditions, which discourage single-parent families, with just 2.4% of Japanese babies born outside of marriage, compared to around 40% in the US and Europe. As such, some economists have suggested that Japan's shrinking workforce can only be propped up through large-scale immigration. However, Japan has historically had a very closed immigration policy, with Japan's foreign population until recently making up less than 3% of the country, below the global average of 3.5% and well below the OECD average of around 15%. In 2019, though, to boost Japan's working population, the government quietly introduced a new work visa for specialized skilled workers, the SSW-1 visa, allowing foreign nationals to work in Japan for a maximum of 5 years in any of 12 designated sectors with the worst labor shortages. Then in 2023, the government introduced a new SSW-2 visa, allowing foreign workers to bring their dependents, i.e. family members, to Japan with them. This visa can also be renewed any number of times, so SSW-2 workers can stay in Japan permanently. While originally limited to construction and shipbuilding workers, in 2024 the government extended to 9 other sectors, including services, opening the door to immigration on a broader scale. According to Immigration Services Agency statistics from 2024, nearly half of all skilled worker visa holders were Vietnamese nationals, with the next largest group, just under 20%, being Indonesians. And now, this is where we come on to the difficult bit. At Japan's House of Councillors election last month, the right-wing ultra-nationalist Sanseito party, which was founded in 2020 and ran on a MAGA-style anti-immigration Japanese First campaign, ended up winning 12.6% of the national vote, the third highest share, outperforming the polls. For context, the party focuses heavily on immigration. They want to make it harder for foreigners to buy land in Japan, deny foreigners voting rights, and reduce the influx of foreign workers, blaming immigration for pushing down wages, hoarding welfare benefits, and worsening crime. On top of that, Sanseito also has traditionalist views on gender. The party opposes same-sex marriage and women being able to keep their maiden name, and argues that Japan's imperial succession should be limited to the male line. The party's leader has also said that young women are too focused on having a career and instead should stay at home to raise children. During the campaign, Sanseito's anti-migrant rhetoric caught on, with false claims spreading on social media that welfare support for Chinese migrants in Japan had doubled in 5 years, when in fact government data suggests an increase of only 4.5% between 2018 and 2023. This suggests that, while Sanseito's surge at the recent elections is primarily a sign of frustration with the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, it could also signal a rejection by a growing proportion of the public of the government's expansion of work visas, leading to the spike in foreign population we mentioned earlier, as well as a tacit show of approval for Sanseito's stance on gender equality. However, without a miraculous recovery in the Japanese birth rate, replacing its declining workforce looks impossible without external support. In other words, unless Sanseito or any other party can miraculously conjure up millions of babies, higher levels of immigration may be a necessary, if not existentially crucial, trade-off. Now, when you're diving into complicated topics such as this, it's quite easy to get caught up in what you know without even missing a beat. But what about the stories you don't see? Or what happens when the stories you do see are purposely leaving out information to try and sway your thinking? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News, are experts at helping with just that. That's because Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles from across the world and puts them all in one place for you to easily compare how the news is being covered by different outlets online. For each and every story, you can see the number of sources reporting on it, as well as the political bias, factuality, and ownership of said sources. For example, if we take this story on Japan's population decline, you can see that there are 70 sources reporting on it, with 17 of them coming from the left and 8 coming from the right. You can even compare headlines to see what either side is saying, with the left framing it as a stark demographic emergency, in contrast to the right focusing on the government. That's not all though. Ground News has tons of super handy features, and our personal favourite is their blind spot feed. Here you can find stories that have been disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, helping you challenge your perspective on someone else's media reality. Here at TLDR, we're passionate about helping you understand how bias may affect the media you consume, something that Ground News also firmly believes in. Because of this, we're offering 40% off their unlimited access Vantage Plan subscription if you use the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. You can only access this discount through our link, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started today.